In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, to whom is glory forever. Amen. Today we'll continue what we started in the previous episodes, the creation of man. And we started in the last episode to explain Genesis 1 because it relates to understanding the order of the creation and the material which God has brought living beings from, and that is the ground. In day 3, we touched upon it last week, but we'll get into the details till we get to day 6, which is the creation of man. In day 3, then God said, "Let the water under the heaven be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. The water under heaven was gathered into its places, and the dry land appeared. So God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Well, let's call this part A of day 3. Part A of day 3, which let the dry land appear. So this dry land was under the deep that was in day 1. In day 2, the deep separated into two parts, part that's being absorbed by the earth and part that's being growing in volume. That's why it created air in the middle called firmament. That's day 2. Now day 3, let's focus on the earth. And as the water keeps being absorbed by the earth, one of the reasons is Pangea, as the continents separate from one another. There could be more detailed processes, but we will not need it for our topic in that much detail. And the dry land appeared as this process going on. That gives us very important insight that it didn't say God created the dry land. It was under the water and let the dry land appear. And it tells us that another key point is that these days could be billions of years long. Because that process, it does not tell us how long every day took. It tells us the order, الترتيب, the order of the days. And the order of the days sounds very rational, because it talks about a certain picture, and then as time goes on, that picture changes from one form to the other. And then in the day 3, the new form of it is that as the process of the ground absorbing that water that was covering it, at some point, the ground started to appear. Let the dry land appear. So we see that the Bible doesn't give us the science, but it gives us enough words that with the science later on, as we discover gravity, gravitational forces, movement of the water into the cavities, this is basically potential energy going into kinetic energy, and the dry land appearing will cause the following, which is part B. Then God said, "Let the earth, the ground, bring forth the herb of grass." Now we start having living things, bearing seed according to its kind and likeness. So the seed carries the genetic identity of what the tree it will become, and when the tree brings seed, it will be exactly the same seed. So it has its seed in itself according to its kind. Bearing seed according to its kind and likeness, let the fruit tree bear fruit, whose seed is in itself, it contains its own genetic code, is in itself, according to its kind on earth, repeating, according to its kind. It was so. Thus the earth brought forth the herb of grass, bearing seed, according to its kind and likeness. The fruit tree bore fruit, whose seed is in itself, according to its kind on earth. God saw it was good, so evening and morning were the third day. We focus here on what the Bible is telling us, that there are certain types of plants. Each plant brings its own. Its seed, when you plant it, it brings back the same plant again. And the plant generates the same seed again. Its seed is in itself, according to its kind. If you start thinking about evolution and so on, we're going to dedicate certain topics about evolution and what we believe about it and so on. So we'll not get into this part in order we don't lose our line of explanation here. We're following the order, the sequence of the appearance of life from one episode, from one phase one day to the next. Now the day is, we can picture that with this view here. And the view tells us now there is plants coming out, and these plants are exposed to light. When plants are exposed to light and they have chlorophyll, which is green, what happens is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, I involve it here because photosynthesis is a process where the plants emit O2, oxygen, in the atmosphere. So the firmament, which was the air that was told us how it came into existence in day 2, needs to be breathable for the next phase of the coming of certain organisms that will need O2 in their function, in their life, to sustain their life, their living. Before we get there, these plants will have different shapes, will have different forms. So we know that the different forms of the plants is related to their seasons. And lo and behold, day 4, now that light will be converted. Sun will be created out of nothing, or the sun will be created by the gravitational forces that would put light together, that certain fusion will happen, generating an immense amount of energy. Whatever the reason, it's not important. What Genesis focus for us to respect our rational is the order, the sequence. So day 4 is relating the sun and the moon to seasons, and that's profound. And the seasons now are very important because this is the way we understand now how there are different plants that appear in different time, different seasons. From verse 14, then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven for illumination to divide day from night. Verse 15, let them be for signs and seasons. Signs mean you can use them the sign of a certain organization of stars tells you how to navigate in the oceans or in the seas. These are the signs. You can see a sign and know where you are, your location. And seasons. Here is an amazing correlation between these two new stars for illumination and the seasons. And for days and years, yes, we know the end of the year by the full rotation of the earth around the sun. Also, this is a topic of detail, Galileo and Copernicus and heliocentric, earth-centric, not in our part today, but there is dedication to this bulk of topics on its own. It was so. Then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of heaven to give light on the earth. So the firmament is now the space, as we know the space today, not the breathable air. And to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good, so evening and morning were the 4th day. So what I want to stress, as we're continuing the days of the creation, is the correlation between the sun and the moon and the seasons and the signs and the days and the years. Day 5 has another profound part, which starts at verse 20. But in the picture here we see, here is the earth will rotate around this conglomeration of light, which is the sun, and that will create different seasons. So the correlation in day 4 between the existence of the sun and the seasons is very unlikely for somebody to just look around and says, oh, this is how I know that the earth is formed, and writes this sequence. Let's go to day 5. Now we have, as we stand at the end of day 4, is plants, different forms, because there's different seasons. O2 is being emitted all the time in the atmosphere. These 4 days could be billions of years long. What we care about is the sequence. And to remind you, what we care about for the creation account is to show that the earth, the material that God used for bringing life, was consecrated. And the term consecrated is a theological term, consecrated by the Holy Spirit, consecrating the material that is used for the creation. And all of the life came out of the earth, as we mentioned the verses last week. Genesis 2:7 for man, Genesis 2:9 for plants, Genesis 2:19 for animals, as the material of the creation. But of course, man, as we stressed, came by the breath of God in that material, the dust of the ground. And the material we're talking about is the ground. Day 5. Day 5 is going to see something amazing also in correlation in day 5. That is very hard for just somebody to fabricate a Bible or to fabricate a religion, to put these two things or these two species together, or these two types of species together. Verse 20 and day 5. Then God said, let the waters bring forth creatures having life, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of heaven's firmament. So now fish and birds related together or correlated together. It was so. Why is that gives credibility to the Bible? Genesis 1. Who would like to make a religion and just looks around, okay, let me write you how universe came about or how our earth came about with all what we see around us. And he relates birds to fish. So the challenge and that gives credibility to the Bible is Genesis 1. It has a sequence. It has phases one after the other. It correlates the sun and the moon to seasons. And it relates things that if you look around cannot relate them. Birds flying and fish under the sea. And they are correlated together, that they are put together in the same phase of life. So think, if science proves this later, that they are correlated together, but if somebody creates a religion, how would he put them together as related? And it does. That the birds are in the same phase as the fish. So I'm putting here a probability that is very unlikely for someone to look around them and says, here is the sequence of how the creation happened. Here is the sequence. And he writes this chapter. Genesis 1 is one of the biggest credibility for the Bible as a book that cannot be created by human. And every winged bird, thus God made great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, again, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. So here is again the gift to this creation to maintain themselves by bringing an offspring. It's a gift to them that they are able to multiply. It's a system put in them. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on earth. So evening and morning were the 5th day. So what I want to focus is, as I said, is the correlation between them. Something we notice about fish and birds is that they navigate. Birds and fish, they move in a fluid. If you study fluid mechanics, or you know that the word fluid covers two things, gases and liquid. Gases and liquid are a category that is described by one word, fluid. If you are in the engineering field, you would know fluid mechanics and Bernoulli's equation that handles everything about fluid conservation of energy. So we see here in day 5 is the presence of species that navigate in fluids. They have a propelling mechanism and they have a steering mechanism. Birds and fish, they propel and they steer, and they both operate in fluids. Birds in air and fish in liquid. So what are the odds for someone to create something and put them together, just looking around them, and put these two species in the same phase as the order of the appearance of life? We will continue next episode, about also the account of the creation. And don't forget, we went into that account in order to show that the earth or the ground was consecrated by the Holy Spirit, because we are taking a theological realm here. There is a lot of science that we can discuss on the side, but it's not in the theme that we're discussing here for salvation. But I wanted to show that the Holy Spirit operates on material. The Holy Spirit operates on material. The Holy Spirit dwells in Adam. We haven't discussed the creation of Eve yet, but the Holy Spirit operates on material, and the Holy Spirit dwelt in Adam, consecrates the material, and has dwelt in Adam. So this is very important, unforgettable keys about the Holy Spirit in the creation, account of the Holy Spirit in the creation account.